Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. There were two mugs on the table. Only one was hers. She always ordered the same thing: Earl Grey with oat milk and 2 sugar cubes. I only knew this because I used to bring it to her every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. after her morning yoga class. The barista at Olive and Pine once joked that I was the husband of the year. That was months ago. Now, I was sitting in the back of the cafe, alone, with a half-finished slice of lemon loaf and a stomach full of cold nerves. She was right there. Laughing. I mean really laughing. The kind of laugh that showed her gums. I hadn't seen that version of her in ages. Maybe years. She touched his hand lightly. Just enough. Just too long. I hadn't planned this. I was supposed to be picking up vacuum filters from the hardware store. But traffic detoured me. And somehow I ended up here, at this cafe, like a dog returning to the place it was last fed. And there she was. Not dressed for yoga. Not dressed for inventory day at the shop, which is what she told me she had planned. She wore a pale green blouse she once said made her feel elegant but dangerous. I remember because I'd made a dumb joke about her being the James Bond of houseplants. The man across from her had a leather satchel and a smirk that felt custom fit. They leaned close. Too close. I counted the seconds between their eye contact. 3 seconds is friendship. 5 is flirting. Anything more is. I don't know. I didn't want to know. I took out the note from my coat pocket. Not because I expected to see her today. I'd written it weeks ago. Carried it around like some kind of emotional life preserver. I didn't even know what I was waiting for. The note said, "Don't come home." It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was just simple. Final. I walked up to her table without thinking. She didn't see me until I was standing directly beside her. Her smile froze in place like a faulty screen. I placed the note next to her phone, nodded once, and walked out. But here's the part one can't stop thinking about. Reddit. The part that keeps replaying in my head like a skipping record. As I pushed the door open, I heard her. Not a gasp. Not a cry. Not even a whisper. She laughed. She read the note. And laughed. What kind of person laughs at being told not to come home? What kind of husband walks away without demanding answers? And what kind of nightmare begins in a cafe with good lighting and soft jazz? I didn't go home after that. I drove in circles for nearly 2 hours, stopping once to scream into the steering wheel like a man who'd just realized his whole life might have been background noise. And when I finally did return to the house that no longer felt like mine, I found something that made my blood run cold. Something waiting for me on the kitchen counter. When I got home, the house was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, thick quiet. The kind that feels like it's waiting to hear your reaction. The kind that makes you think 1,000 people are hiding just out of view, watching what you'll do next. Every floorboard creak sounded like an accusation. I didn't take off my shoes. I just stood in the hallway for a while, keys still in my hand, listening for the usual background noise. The soft whir of the diffuser, her lo-fi playlist humming from the kitchen speaker, the cat's lazy paw taps across the floor. None of it. Just silence. But the light over the sink was on. And on the counter beneath it, right in the center, like it had been deliberately placed there, was a black leather glove. Just one. It wasn't mine. It wasn't hers either. I know that with every fiber of my being. Miriam hated leather gloves. Said they made her feel like a magician who never learned any tricks. She wore knitted mittens shaped like foxes and raccoons. Cute. Childish. Definitely not this. This glove looked expensive. The kind of glove that belonged to a man who owned 3 umbrellas and called his relatives father and mother. It had a monogram, too. Gold lettering. W-E-S. Or maybe W-L-S. The letters curled in on themselves like they were trying to keep secrets. I picked it up. Stupid, I know. Like I was going to sniff it or something ridiculous. But instead, I turned it over and noticed a small tear on the underside near the thumb. Fresh. Still fraying. Which meant it hadn't been there long. And then I saw the note. Not the one I'd written. That was probably still crumpled in Miriam's handbag at that cozy little cafe where she laughed like she hadn't promised forever. This was a different note. Folded neatly, placed next to the glove like a breadcrumb in some twisted fairy tale. It was written on the same kind of paper we keep by the phone. I only glanced at it before folding it back up, because the handwriting made my stomach turn. It's done. You were right. That's all it said. No name. No date. No explanation. Just those 6 words. Vague, terrifying, and heavy enough to collapse a man's lungs. I put the glove down. I backed away from the counter like it was wired to explode. My first thought, call her. My second, no. If she left this here, she wanted me to find it. She wanted me to spiral, and I was already halfway there. So I did what any irrational, sleep-deprived, emotionally gutted husband might do in this situation. I started searching the house. Not for her. For him. I opened closets, checked under the bed, even peeked behind the shower curtain like I was in some low-budget horror movie. I knew it was pointless, but my brain needed to do something. Anything to stop thinking about that glove. That note. Her laugh. When I finally made it back downstairs, something else had changed. The note was gone. I swear to you. Read it, I hadn't touched it. I hadn't moved it. But it was gone. The glove was still there, but the folded paper? Vanished. Now I know what you're thinking. Maybe it slipped off the counter. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was never there. But it was. And the truly disturbing part? When I looked up at the window by the sink, there were faint smudges on the glass. Like fingertips. Just enough condensation to suggest someone had been standing there, watching me, from outside. In that moment, it didn't feel like I was living in a breakup anymore. It felt like I'd stepped into someone else's script, someone who didn't care if I ever figured out what was going on. Someone who wanted me to watch it unravel, one twisted breadcrumb at a time. And I hadn't even gotten to the voicemail yet. The one she left me an hour later. That's next. And trust me, you're not ready for what she said. It came in at 2:19 a.m. I wasn't asleep. I hadn't even tried. The house felt foreign by then, like someone had taken our old home, put it in a blender, and reassembled the pieces slightly off-kilter. Everything was in the right place, but none of it felt right. I kept pacing from the living room to the hallway and back again, retracing my own steps like I was supposed to find some kind of answer buried in the floorboards. Then my phone buzzed. I checked the screen and felt that brief, delusional flicker of hope, her name. I thought maybe she was calling to explain everything. That maybe, just maybe, she had a breakdown at the cafe, came home early, panicked, and decided to be honest for once. That she'd say it was a misunderstanding. That it was her cousin, her old professor, some weird therapy assignment. Anything. But it wasn't a call. It was a voicemail. No missed call logged. Just a message waiting to be played. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Sometimes the app bugged out and didn't show the incoming ring. But then I hit play, and every hair on my body stood up before the first word even landed. The voice wasn't hers. Not entirely. It sounded like her. Same soft tone, same calculated pauses, but something was off. Like she was trying too hard to sound natural. Like someone reading a script written by someone who didn't quite understand human emotion. There was a pause at the beginning. 6 seconds of silence, with faint static and what sounded like a distant drawer opening. Then came the voice. Okay, he doesn't know. I think we're good. I left it exactly like you said. I didn't touch the glove. He'll find it. He always notices everything eventually. Another pause, then a quiet chuckle. A chuckle I've never heard from her before. Low, sharp, unapologetic. If this works, we won't have to wait long. He's already unraveling. I saw it in his face today. His hands were shaking when he walked away. He still thinks I don't know he was there. The line went quiet again. Then the final sentence. I'll be at the cabin Friday. Don't be late this time. Click. I stared at my phone for so long it dimmed and locked itself. My thumb hovered over the screen, not sure if I wanted to delete it or replay it and suffer again. Cabin. What cabin? We don't own one. We've never even rented one. The only time we went into the woods together was 5 years ago during a weekend retreat, and she hated it. Said the silence made her skin crawl. And the most disturbing part? She hadn't called me. I double-checked the logs. No missed call. No outgoing message from her number. Just the voicemail, dropped in from the ether like some sick audio postcard from an alternate timeline. I didn't sleep. I didn't even sit down. I paced until sunrise, then finally left the house and drove. Not to the cafe. Not to the library. I didn't even know where I was going at first. But by instinct, or maybe something worse, I found myself in a place I hadn't visited since we first got married. Her mother's house. Now here's the part that makes my stomach turn even as I type it. Her mother passed away 6 years ago. But the house? It's still in Miriam's name. She never sold it. She always said she wasn't ready to let it go. The neighbors thought someone was renting it. They'd mention lights on at night, cars in the driveway, but Miriam always brushed it off. Said it was just the real estate agent doing check-ins. that it was empty. Just memories in boxes and dust on doorknobs. But when I pulled up that morning, the driveway wasn't empty. There was a car. A black sedan. New. Shiny. No plates. And someone tall, was standing at the edge of the porch, smoking. He didn't see me. I didn't get out. I just sat there across the street, watching through my cracked windshield with a stomach full of static and questions I didn't want answered. Because in that moment, I wasn't scared for my marriage anymore. I was scared for me. Because whatever this was, it wasn't about love. It wasn't about betrayal. It felt bigger, calculated, cold. And I think I'm part of something I was never supposed to survive. I sat in the car for what felt like an hour, engine off, watching the man smoke in front of the house I thought no one lived in anymore. The early morning haze settled across the yard like a film, and even from across the street, I could see the grass hadn't been cut in weeks, dry yellow stalks curling around an overturned lawn chair and a cracked garden gnome that had been missing an eye since 2017. The man finally flicked his cigarette and went back inside. He didn't lock the door. He didn't even glance back. Just stepped in like he owned the place. That small detail, that lack of caution, hit me harder than I expected. He wasn't worried about being seen. He didn't care. Because to him, I was no threat. I waited another 20 minutes, then crossed the street. My hands were sweating so badly, I nearly dropped the spare key when I pulled it out from under the loose porch board. Same hiding spot Miriam used when we were first married and stayed here once a month to keep the dust from settling. That was always her line. Now it felt like a punchline to a joke I never understood. The door creaked open like something out of a bad horror movie. The air smelled like old books and dried lavender, her mother's scent, and something else, something newer and sharp, like paint or varnish. The place was dim. No voices, no music, no footsteps, just the quiet hum of an old refrigerator laboring against time. I moved slowly through the living room. Nothing had changed. Same floral couch, same dented coffee table, same needlepoint wall art that read, "Kindness is a gift everyone can afford." Except the glass over that one was cracked now. A single spiderweb line stretching from the top corner to the middle of the word gift. The front of the house was familiar, comforting almost. But when I reached the hallway that led to the back bedrooms, that's when everything turned wrong. There was a door at the end of the hallway that had never existed before. It was deep navy blue, almost black, with a brass knob that gleamed like it had just been installed. The hallway was tight, claustrophobic, lit only by a weak bulb overhead, and that new door pulsed at the edge like it didn't belong in this dimension, like it had been grafted onto the house from somewhere else entirely. I didn't move for a full minute. I just stood there, staring at that door, feeling like if I opened it, I'd never come back out. Then, behind me, soft, deliberate, a creak on the floorboards. The sound of someone stepping into the hall. I spun, heart in my throat. But no one was there. Just shadows and dust. I turned back. The blue door was slightly open. Maybe I imagined that part. I'm not sure. But I know I didn't imagine what I saw when I finally pushed it open and stepped inside. The room wasn't a bedroom. It wasn't a storage space or a study or a workshop. It was a replica. A perfect, unsettling replica of our living room back home. Same tan carpet. Same couch. Even down to the faded ketchup stain on the armrest from that night I dropped my burger watching the Super Bowl. Same lamp. Same exact stack of magazines she always pretended to read but never did. Even the cat's bed was there. But there was no cat. The only thing that was different was the mirror on the far wall. It was oval. Large. Too clean. Like it had never been touched by time or fingerprints. And taped to the bottom of the mirror was a Polaroid. Of me. Asleep. In our real living room. On our real couch. I know it wasn't old. I had a bandage on my thumb from a cut I got last week. And the mug on the table beside me. The one that said, "I cry at documentaries," had a fresh crack I only noticed 2 days ago. Someone had taken a photo of me while I was sleeping and printed it and brought it here. I didn't realize I was shaking until I tried to take the photo down and my hand jerked hard enough to knock the mirror slightly askew. That's when I saw it, tucked behind the frame. Another note. Folded. Clean. One line. He's starting to see it. No signature. No date. Just those words. I stumbled backward. Almost knocked over the lamp. My breath caught in my throat like it didn't want to come out. Because suddenly it hit me. This wasn't a betrayal. This was surveillance. This was performance. And I was the only one in the audience who hadn't read the script. I don't remember driving home. I know I did. Obviously, my car didn't teleport, but I can't recall a single detail from the road. Not the turns, not the traffic lights, not the rising panic in my chest. All I remember is gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt and thinking over and over, he's starting to see it. What the hell was I supposed to be seeing? The Polaroid was in my pocket. I hadn't told anyone. Who would I tell? Hey, my wife left a surveillance photograph of me in a replica of my living room inside her dead mother's house, which now has a secret room that didn't exist last year. That conversation would get me a psych eval and a prescription before I finished the sentence. By the time I turned onto my street, the sun was low and angry in the sky. My house looked staged, like a model home, like it had been cleaned up too well. The blinds were shut, which we never did before 6. The porch light was already on. The driveway was empty, except for him. He was standing beside my mailbox. Same black coat, same tall frame. It was the guy from earlier, the one who had been on Miriam's porch smoking like he paid rent there. Only now, he wasn't smoking. He was staring at my front door like he was trying to burn a hole through it. And in his hand, he had something. It looked like a folder. Manila. Thick. Sealed with a red elastic band. I pulled up slowly and rolled down my window. My voice cracked when I spoke. Hey, can I help you? He turned his head, but not like people usually do. Not with a casual flick of recognition. He turned slow, measured, like a security camera scanning a license plate. His eyes met mine, and I swear to you, for just a second, I thought he smiled. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just walked, calmly, confidently, up to my car and tapped the folder against the window twice. I hesitated. Everything inside me screamed not to open it. But I did anyway. He handed it through the window. No greeting. No instruction. Then he turned around, walked back toward the street, and got into a car I hadn't even noticed was parked under the oak tree. A white hatchback. No plates. It drove off before I could even think about chasing it. I sat there for maybe 2 full minutes before I opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Dozens. Maybe over 100. All of me. Walking. Shopping. Sleeping. Eating. Driving. Some of them from weeks ago. Some from last night. One of them, and this is the one that nearly made me throw up, was from this morning, just before I got into the car to go to the mother's house. I was standing on my own porch, keys in hand, looking confused. And someone had captured that moment from across the street. Not just captured, zoomed, centered, labeled. There was a small post-it note on the back. 7:42 a.m. Hesitating. Who writes that? Who observes a man second-guessing himself and documents it like a research experiment? There were more notes, scribbled along the borders of some of the photos. Agitated. Likely knows. Looks up too often. Anxiety trigger. Tests limits. Still unaware of loop. Loop? What loop? My mouth was dry. My hands felt disconnected from the rest of me. I turned over the last sheet in the folder, half expecting another photo. Instead, it was a list. A bulleted list. Titled, Behavioral Deviation Log, Subject 1A. And under that were entries. Like journal notes. But from someone else watching me. Sleeps inconsistently, 4. 5H average. Does not question ambient sound anomalies, pass. Reacted to blue door faster than projection model, flag. Rewrote, don't come home. Note 3 times before final version, observed. Potential cognitive leak, facial twitch after voicemail. High internalization. Moderate resistance. Low threat. I couldn't breathe. I was being studied. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being used. Used for something. A test? A game? A system? I stumbled into the house with the folder pressed to my chest like it could shield me from whatever truth was pressing in from the corners of my life. Inside, the house was dark. Too dark. The kind of dark you feel. And in that silence, my phone buzzed. One new message. Not a text. A video. From Miriam. Just 5 seconds long. No sound. Just her face, close to the camera, whispering something with wide, panicked eyes. And behind her, that same mirror from the replica room. But this time, it was cracked. I watched the video at least 30 times. 5 seconds. That's all she gave me. No audio. No explanation. Just her face, half-lit, pale, desperate, staring into the camera like she'd just seen something behind it. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but the way her eyes darted, Right, left, back at the camera, told me she didn't have much time. It didn't feel like a message. It felt like a warning. And then there was the mirror. That same oval frame. Same position. Same impossible reflection. Only now, a jagged crack split it down the center, like it had been struck with something from behind. It ruined the image, fractured her face in the final frame into two broken halves, one calm, one terrified. That moment sat in my chest like a loaded spring. I didn't call her back. I couldn't. The number was blocked. It wasn't even her number. My call history listed it simply as unknown contact. No option to reply. No trace. Just a single, unclickable video file sitting like a landmine in my inbox. I didn't sleep again. I didn't move much, either. I just sat in the living room, folders still spread across the coffee table, staring at photographs of myself taken from angles I couldn't explain. My mind spiraled into theories. Was she in trouble? Was she complicit? Was this some kind of test? Had I already failed it? Sometime after 3 a.m., the lights flickered. Not a full outage, just a pulse. Like the power hiccuped. Everything dimmed for half a second. Then back. I might have dismissed it if it weren't for the sound that followed. A low, grinding noise from upstairs. Wood against wood. A drawer sliding open, maybe. Or a door. I rose, slowly, my joints stiff like they knew something I didn't. The stairs groaned under my weight as I climbed. The hallway was empty. No lights on. But at the end, in the guest room we hadn't used in over a year, the door was wide open. That room always creeped me out. Miriam used to keep old boxes in there. Childhood diaries, broken electronics, and used decor. A graveyard of forgotten things. It always smelled like dryer sheets and wet paint, even though we never painted it. I stepped inside and froze. The mirror was there. Not our mirror. The mirror. Oval. Tall. Seamless. Except now, the crack was visible, identical to the one in the video. It ran straight through the middle like a scar dividing the past from the present. And taped to the center, right over the crack, was another Polaroid. Not of me this time. Of Miriam. But not like I remembered her. Not soft, not composed. She looked feral. Eyes wide, hair tangled, mouth slightly open. She was staring into the mirror with her back to the camera and in the reflection. I wasn't there. The room was. The furniture. The light. But not me. She was looking into a version of this room that didn't include me at all. On the back of the photo, scribbled in rushed handwriting. If you're seeing this, it's already looping. That word again, loop. I backed away. My hands were sweating. My skin felt too tight. Something in the room was wrong. Not visibly, not physically, but spiritually. The air was thick. I couldn't stay. But as I turned, I noticed something I hadn't before. Behind the cracked mirror, mounted to the wall just above the baseboard, was a small access panel, the kind of thing used for plumbing or electrical. It looked old, slightly rusted, but the screws were loose. Someone had opened it recently. I dropped to my knees and pulled it open. Inside, there was no pipe, no wires, just a square hole into the wall, deeper than it should have gone. And at the very end, placed deliberately in the dark, was an object wrapped in fabric. I reached in and pulled it out. It was a VHS tape. No label, no case, just a piece of red string tied around it, as if someone wanted to make sure it wasn't mistaken for anything else. Who even has a VHS player anymore? I didn't, but I knew where one was. In the replica room, the one in her mother's house. I drove before I could talk myself out of it. No breakfast, no shoes, just keys, tape in hand, and questions swirling like gnats around a corpse. By the time I pulled up to the old house again, the sun was rising. Light spilled across the driveway like an invitation. There was no car, no man, just that silent, sagging porch and the same too perfect stillness. I didn't knock. I let myself in and headed straight down the hallway. The blue door was still there, closed, waiting. This time, I didn't hesitate. Inside, the replica room was identical, except the lamp was on. And next to it, on the TV stand, was a small, dust-covered VHS player. Plugged in, functional, like it had been expecting me. I sat on the couch, my couch, but not mine, slid the tape into the player, and pressed play. And what I saw, I can't write it yet. Not now, because I think someone just knocked on my real front door, and I don't think they're here to explain anything. I didn't answer the knock. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stared at the front door through the peephole and saw no one. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. The knock had been too intentional. 1, 2, pause, 3. Like it was part of a code I was supposed to recognize, but didn't. And that bothered me more than if someone had been standing there with a bat and a mask. When I finally stepped away from the door, I realized something far more unsettling. I couldn't remember how long I'd been sitting there before the knock. Couldn't remember how I got home from the replica room. The drive. The time. Nothing. It was like my brain skipped a page, then stapled the book shut. But I remembered the tape. That damn tape. I had watched it. I knew I had. But the memory of what I saw on that screen was gone. Not fuzzy, not blurred, just erased. A perfect void where a trauma should have lived. My hands were still shaking. My mouth still dry. My whole body knew I'd seen something it didn't want to remember. But my mind. Blank. I ran to my phone, opened my voice recorder app, and started talking out loud. Just in case. I listed everything I could recall. The mirror, the Polaroids, the folder, the message from Miriam, the loop, the glove, the strange man, the cabin, the VHS. And as I said those words out loud, something strange happened. My lights flickered again. Same as before, one long pulse, and then steady. And when I looked down, my phone screen had gone black. Not off, not dead, just black. No buttons worked. No reset. It wouldn't even power down. Just a dead screen, glowing faintly in my hand like it was trying to pretend it still functioned. That's when the nausea hit. It wasn't a normal kind of sickness, not food poisoning or the flu. It was like my stomach suddenly didn't believe it belonged inside my body. A deep, magnetic pull downwards. Like I was being reeled towards something. Something under the house. Or under the world. I staggered to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. That's when I saw it. In the mirror, of course. There was a mark behind my left ear. A small, nearly invisible indentation. Perfectly round. About the size of a headphone jack. I touched it. No pain. No scab. No memory of how it got there. But I could feel it. Cold. Artificial. Like it had been there all along. Just waiting for me to notice. I stumbled backward. My towel rack collapsed behind me and hit the tile, but I barely heard it. Because suddenly, I did remember something from the tape. Not an image. Not a sound. Just a feeling. Familiarity. The kind of familiarity you don't question until it's pointed out. The kind you don't even notice because it's been stitched into your daily routine like background music. There had been footage of me sleeping. From angles that didn't make sense. From above. From behind my head. From inside the house. Shots that no phone or camera could have taken without me waking up. And worse, there had been dialogue. But not mine. Hers. Miriam. Speaking softly. Calm. Almost rehearsed. But the tone had changed. She wasn't trying to deceive anymore. She wasn't acting. It wasn't seduction or manipulation. It was instruction. She had been reading something aloud. A list. A set of directions. Words like, confirm dissociation state. Remove response latency from subject 1A. Interruption occurred during kitchen loop. Initiate rollback sequence. Rollback sequence. What kind of language is that? This wasn't a breakup. It wasn't a betrayal. It was an experiment. And I wasn't the husband. I was the control variable. A disposable constant. An actor who didn't know he was on stage. I searched the house for cameras. For microphones. For anything. But everything came up clean. Too clean. Like it had been sanitized. Reset. Like the entire space had been rebuilt to look just slightly wrong. I finally stopped when I reached the basement. A place I rarely visited. Old paint cans, storage boxes, that weird treadmill we never used. But now, there was something else. A hatch. In the floor. A new hatch. Bolted shut. With the same blue paint from the secret door in her mother's house. And carved into it, not written, not painted, were 3 words. Watch again carefully. The message wasn't for her. It was for me. Because whatever was behind that hatch, it wasn't waiting for someone to stumble on it. It was waiting for me to remember it had always been there. I stared at the words on the hatch for a long time. Watch again carefully. Every part of me screamed to turn around, to leave the basement, to forget this nightmare like a fever dream. But something had shifted inside me. The fear wasn't in control anymore. Not fully. It was still there, lingering at the edges, but it had given way to something stronger. Resolve. Not rage. Not revenge. Just the quiet certainty that I'd been asleep for too long. And now I was finally ready to wake up. I unbolted the hatch. There was a click, not mechanical, but almost atmospheric. like the room itself had been holding its breath. I opened it slowly. No stairs, no ladder, just a dim square leading down into soft orange light, like sunset bleeding through fog. No smell, no wind, no sound. And then I heard her voice. Miriam. But not through a speaker, not through a phone. She was down there. I climbed down, knees trembling, feet landing on a padded surface that felt more like stage foam than concrete. The walls were smooth, warm, almost pulsing, like they were alive but not in a grotesque way. I moved forward, heart pounding, until the corridor widened into a round chamber. She was standing in the middle, smiling, but not that distant, fake smile she wore in the cafe. This was real, tired, honest, relieved. You made it, she said. I didn't speak. My throat was a knot. I wanted to scream, cry, demand answers, but all I could do was stare. She nodded slowly, as if understanding my silence. You weren't supposed to find everything that fast. But once the loop started breaking, we had to let it run. I finally forced a sound from my mouth. We. She gestured behind her. The mirror was there. The cracked mirror. But it wasn't broken anymore. It shimmered, faintly glowing, like it was holding something back. A border. A window. And in its reflection, I saw not her, not me, but a version of our living room where I looked alive. Present. Whole. Laughing. I was holding a paintbrush, covered in drops of teal, like I had just finished redecorating. And Miriam, that Miriam, was curled up beside me with a bowl of popcorn, smiling at something I'd just said. It didn't look fake. It looked like a life. She stepped closer. Curtis, listen to me. The experiment wasn't what you think. It wasn't about surveillance. It wasn't about breaking you. It was about giving you a chance to see what was holding you back. I couldn't follow. You manipulated everything. The house, the photos, the glove, the folder, me. No, she said gently. We revealed them. We didn't create the cracks. We just let you find them. I stepped away. You cheated. With that man. In the cafe. She shook her head. That man was part of the loop. A prompt. A nudge. You weren't reacting to betrayal. You were reacting to abandonment. The kind you've carried since before I ever met you. The mirror flickered. Images shifted, not surveillance, but memories. Curtis at 10, staring out the window, waiting for a dad who never picked him up. Curtis at 19, cleaning up his mom's broken dishes in silence. Curtis at 28, being told, "You're just too passive," by the first woman he ever truly trusted. Tears filled my eyes before I realized I was crying. Because I wasn't seeing manipulation. I was seeing myself, piece by piece, across years I'd buried. The silence. The inaction. The waiting. Always waiting. You built your life around keeping peace, she said. But peace isn't the same as presence. You were never in your life. Just orbiting it. And what was this? I whispered. Some simulation to fix me? No, she said. A chance to wake you up. You left that note at the cafe, "Don't come home," because deep down, you knew you weren't home. You never let yourself be. Not really. I closed my eyes. It all felt too big, too surreal. But somewhere in the noise, I felt something else. Release. The mirror flickered again. This time, it showed a future. Not perfect. Not polished. Just real. Curtis, sitting in a sunlit room, laughing with people whose names I didn't recognize yet. Curtis, painting a wall with no fear. Curtis, walking into his own home without waiting for the world to collapse. She placed her hand on my chest. This isn't goodbye. It's a beginning. The loop ends when you let it. And then, without drama, without sound, the chamber dimmed. And I was back in my living room. Same couch. Same table. Except now, it felt different. Lighter. Warmer. On the coffee table sat a mug of tea. Still steaming. And a new note beside it. Just 3 words. Welcome home, Curtis.